It was supposed to be a celebration. The rain was still dripping from my coat when I stood at my daughter's front door, holding a $220 chocolate strawberry cake. I smiled, ready to see her face light up the way it did when she was a little girl. But when the door creaked open, her eyes were cold. She folded her arms and whispered the last words I ever expected to hear from my only child. "The one gift I want most, Mom, is for you to just die." In that moment, the candles flickered like tiny graves and my heart shattered into pieces. 45 years of sacrifice collapsed with a single sentence, and yet, that cruel wish would ignite the greatest transformation of my life. The door slammed shut behind me with a hollow thud, and for a moment, the silence in Madison's living room felt heavier than any night shift I'd ever endured at the hospital. I stood there, clutching the cake like it was a useless relic of some forgotten ritual. My chest burned, not only from her words, but from the avalanche of memories they had triggered. For 45 years, I had been more than just a mother. I had been a provider, a protector, a nurse, a financier, a babysitter, roles stacked so high that I had long ago disappeared beneath them. I remembered the sterile, fluorescent lights of Swedish Medical Center, how I used to walk its endless corridors with aching feet, whispering to myself, "Just one more shift, Eleanor. Just one more, and Madison will have everything she needs." And she did. When Madison was 3 and pneumonia nearly stole her tiny breath, I sold my late mother's jewelry to cover the $1 in $200 antibiotics. When she turned 16, I worked every weekend for 4 months just to buy her that pink prom dress she swore she needed to feel beautiful. $800 that meant weeks of canned soup for me, but fireworks in her eyes when she twirled in front of the mirror. In college, when she changed majors again and again, I signed every check without complaint. $42,000, money I borrowed against the walls of the house I had once dreamed would be my retirement haven. When she married Daniel, I gave her the wedding of her dreams, the ballroom, the flowers, the champagne fountains, $35,000 drained in one single night. But her smile had made me believe it was worth it, and then, the house. The one she and Daniel live in now, the one where she just told me she wanted me dead. I had handed over $150,000, scraped together from 40 years of double shifts. My life savings poured into bricks and mortar that now echoed with contempt instead of gratitude. As I sat on the edge of her pristine white sofa, I glanced around. Designer vases, polished hardwood, the faint scent of lavender candles. A house I had paid for, but was no longer welcome in. My eyes lingered on a photo of Madison and Daniel with the twins, Nora and Liam, smiling in the summer sun. I used to believe I was part of that smile. Tonight, it felt like a lie. Madison cleared her throat, arms crossed like a judge about to deliver a sentence. "Mom, you have to understand. You're suffocating me. I can't breathe with you always here." Her words struck deeper than knives. I wanted to scream, "Suffocating you? I gave you breath. I gave you life." But all that came out was a trembling whisper. "I've given you everything, Madison. Everything." She rolled her eyes, impatient. "Exactly, and that's the problem." The candles on the cake were melting fast, wax dripping like the years I had wasted. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. If my daughter could wish for my death so easily, then maybe I had already been dead to her for years. But what she didn't know was that those cruel words had awakened something inside me that had been dormant too long. Madison didn't even glance at the cake in my hands. The strawberries were sliding off the glossy chocolate surface, the candles bending in defeat. It sat between us like a symbol of everything I had offered and everything she now rejected. She leaned back against her spotless white sofa, legs crossed, her manicured fingers tapping rhythmically against her arm. The glow of the fireplace reflected in her eyes, but there was no warmth there, only impatience. "Mom," she began slowly, her voice deliberate, sharp. "Do you know what I really want for my birthday? Not cakes, not gifts, not your endless sacrifices." I swallowed hard, still trying to steady my voice. "Then tell me, sweetheart. Tell me what will make you happy. A trip? Jewelry? Even that new car you mentioned? I'll find a way." She cut me off with a bitter laugh. "That's exactly it. You think happiness can be bought with money you don't even have. You throw sacrifices at me like shackles, like I owe you something for every penny you ever spent. Her words crashed over me like icy water. I tried to speak, but she wasn't finished. You suffocate me, Mom. Every call, every visit, every reminder of what you gave up. You don't do it out of love. You do it because you need me. You need to feel important. You need to feel like the center of my world. The room spun for a moment. Her accusations clung to the walls like smoke, suffocating me more than I could ever suffocate her. I stared at her, trying to find the little girl who once clutched my hand on her first day of school, whispering, "Don't let go, Mommy?" But that little girl was gone. "Madison," my voice cracked, "I'm your mother. I carried you, I nursed you, She stood abruptly, her shadow towering over me in the firelight. "And that's the problem," she snapped. "You've carried me my whole life. I can't breathe with you always here, hovering, reminding me of debts I never asked you to pay." Tears stung my eyes, blurring the sharp edges of her pristine home. My throat tightened. "I only ever wanted to be close to you, to be part of your life. You're all I have." Her eyes narrowed, the contempt in them unmistakable. "And that's exactly the problem. The fact that I'm all you have. It's pathetic, Mom. Get a life of your own and stop clinging to mine." The words sliced through me like glass. I sat frozen, the cake still trembling in my hands, the wax dripping onto my fingers. A family dinner filled with laughter. That was the dream I had carried with me into this house. Instead, I had walked into my own funeral. "Everything I've done," I whispered, the tears finally breaking free, "was for you. Every dollar, every shift, every sacrifice." Madison laughed coldly, shaking her head. "Everything you did was for yourself, to feel needed, to keep control. Don't pretend it was selfless." I gasped, my chest tightening as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Her words echoed in my mind, louder than the crackle of the fire. Control, suffocation, obsession. The language of a daughter who no longer saw love, only chains. I rose unsteadily, the cake now a heavy weight I could barely hold. My legs trembled as I walked toward the door. I turned back, desperate, just once, for a flicker of regret in her face, a glimpse of the child I had once known. But all I saw was annoyance, as if she were waiting for me to leave so the celebration could finally begin. "Happy birthday, Madison," I murmured. The words tasted like ashes. When the door closed behind me, the night air hit my face like a slap. My heart pounded in my chest, every beat a reminder of the words I had just heard, the words I would never be able to forget. I carried the cake back into the rain, the candles extinguished, the icing smeared. Each step toward my car felt like it cost me a year of my life. By the time I reached my small apartment, I was shaking. I dropped the cake into the trash, watching as the ruined candles toppled into the darkness. On the old sofa where I had once nursed Madison as a baby, I collapsed, sobs tearing through me. My mind replayed her words over and over. "I want you to die. You're suffocating me. Get a life." And yet, as the night dragged on, something began to shift. The grief gave way to something else, an ember deep inside my chest that I hadn't felt in years. It was small, fragile, but unmistakable. It was anger. It was clarity. It was the beginning of a storm, and Madison had no idea what that storm would bring. Saturday evening, the sky over Seattle turned the color of bruised steel, clouds hanging low as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. My heart pounded as I pulled up in front of Madison's house, the house my blood, sweat, and years had paid for. Every brick looked heavier than before, as though it carried the weight of every dollar I had sacrificed. I hadn't planned to return so soon. But something inside me, sharp and unyielding, demanded it. The receipts I'd stacked neatly on my coffee table still burned in my memory, each figure whispering, "You have given enough. You have the proof. You are not powerless." When the door swung open, Madison froze, surprise flickering across her face before hardening into irritation. "Mom, what are you doing here? I told you to text first." Her words were ice, but this time they didn't pierce me. Not the way they used to. I stood taller, meeting her gaze. "I'm here because we need to talk. Face to face. No more whispers, no more contempt thrown like daggers over the phone." She sighed dramatically, crossing her arms. Fine, come in. But make it quick. Daniel's on his way back, and the twins need dinner. Inside, the familiar lavender scent hung in the air. The fireplace glowed softly, but it felt colder than any winter storm. I glanced at the family photos on the mantel, smiling faces, laughter frozen in frames, and wondered how many of those smiles had been propped up by my sacrifices. Madison sat down, her eyes sharp. Well, what's so urgent? I took a deep breath. My hands didn't tremble this time. I know about Daniel losing his job. Again, and I know you're behind on the mortgage. Her jaw tightened. Daniel told you? I didn't need him to. The math tells me everything. You've built your life on the foundation I gave you. And now, that foundation is cracking. Her laugh was short, brittle. So what? You're here to remind me again of how much you've given? To guilt me into saying thank you? That's all you ever do. No, I said firmly. I'm here to remind you of reality. You asked me to disappear. You told me my greatest gift to you would be my death. My voice shook, not with fear, but with fury. Well, Madison, maybe it's time you see what life is really like without me holding everything together. Her eyes flared, but she leaned forward, lowering her voice to a hiss. You wouldn't dare. You need me more than I need you. You have no one else. The words stung, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled a small envelope from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. The flap was unsealed, the edges worn from my grip. What's this? She demanded. Receipts, I said simply. Every dollar I ever spent on you. From the day you were born until now. Nearly $500,000. You think my love was control? My sacrifices were chains? No, Madison. They were investments, and you've treated them like trash. For the first time, her face faltered. Her eyes flicked down to the envelope, then back up to me, a shadow of unease slipping through her mask of contempt. You wouldn't actually keep track like that, she scoffed, but her voice wavered. I did. And more than that, I've spoken with Harold Stein. As co-signer of your mortgage, I have rights you've conveniently forgotten. If those payments keep slipping, this house, this life you built on my back, can slip away, too. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. For the first time in years, she looked small, vulnerable. I leaned closer, my voice low, steady, electric. The day you told me to die, Madison, something inside me was reborn. You think I'm weak, that I need you, but you're about to learn the truth. You've needed me far more than I ever needed you. The room hung in silence, the only sound the faint crackle of the fire. Madison's nails dug into her arm as she clenched her fists. At that moment, the front door opened and Daniel stepped in, his face weary, his eyes darting between us. He froze when he saw the envelope on the table, his expression a mixture of dread and recognition. Eleanor, he stammered. What's going on? I straightened, my eyes never leaving Madison's. Ask your wife, I said coolly. Ask her what happens when the one person she told to disappear finally takes her at her word. Daniel's face paled, and Madison's fists trembled. The storm was no longer on the horizon. It had arrived, and neither of them had any idea how far I was willing to go. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in decades. My eyes opened to the pale Seattle light streaming through the blinds of my tiny apartment. And for once, the weight pressing on my chest wasn't despair, it was determination. I dressed carefully, pulling on my best navy coat, the one I usually saved for church. Today wasn't about appearances, it was about armor. At the bank, the glass doors slid open with a hushed whoosh, the sterile scent of polished marble wrapping around me. I approached the desk, my steps steady. Good morning, Mrs. Parker, said Mr. Patel, the branch manager. His face lit with the polite recognition of someone who had seen me countless times over the years. How can we help you today? I met his eyes. I want to close joint account number 4587, the one with Madison Parker. For a moment, his brows knit. That account currently has a balance of about $20,000. Are you sure? Completely. The word thundered inside me, though my voice came out calm. Yes, transfer it all into my personal account. He tapped a few keys, nodding as the printer hummed. It'll just take a moment. As I signed the papers, a rush of satisfaction surged through me. For years, that account had been my safety net for Madison's family. Their emergencies, their luxuries disguised as needs. But now it was mine again. $20,000. Not the $500,000 I'd spent, but enough to remind me I still had choices. When I left the bank, the cold air bit at my cheeks, but inside, I felt strangely warm. Step 1, complete. That afternoon, I found myself sitting across from Harold Stein in his oak-paneled office. The smell of leather-bound books and fresh ink filled the air. Harold had been my late husband's closest friend, and over the years he had handled everything from property deeds to medical directives. He looked at me with kind eyes, but when I explained what had happened, those eyes hardened. "Julian always said you were the strongest woman he knew," Harold murmured, adjusting his glasses. "But Eleanor, I never imagined Madison could speak to you like that." "She didn't just speak," I whispered. "She cursed me. She wished me gone from her life. And now, Harold, I intend to give her what she wants. On my terms." His brows rose. "What do you have in mind?" I slid the envelope of receipts across his desk. His fingers hovered over the papers, eyes widening as he skimmed the numbers. "My God, you kept all of this?" "Not out of mistrust," I said quietly. "Out of pride. Every dollar felt like a testament to my love. But now they're evidence, proof of everything I gave, and now I'm taking back control." Harold leaned back, thoughtful. "So what do you want to do?" "I want to change everything. My will, my life insurance, the trust funds. I don't want Madison to receive a single cent when I'm gone." "Not one," he nodded slowly. "We can redirect your assets." "A charitable foundation, perhaps?" "Yes," I said firmly. "The Women Rising Fund, and I want to create a trust for Nora and Liam. But Madison cannot touch a dollar until they're at least 25. Harold scribbled notes. "That's possible. What about your power of attorney and medical directives?" "Remove her name," I replied without hesitation. "She forfeited that right the moment she told me she wanted me dead." Harold's pen froze. He studied me for a long moment. "Eleanor, are you certain? These are final decisions." I met his gaze, my spine straight. "I've never been more certain of anything." For 2 hours we pored over documents. With each signature, I felt the chains of a lifetime loosening. Life insurance redirected. Will rewritten. Power of attorney reassigned to Harold himself. The old life, the one defined by endless sacrifice, was dying with every stroke of my pen. When I finally leaned back, Harold gathered the papers into a neat stack. "It's done. She won't see this coming." I exhaled, a strange mix of grief and triumph coursing through me. The little girl I had once dressed in pink lace. The woman who now spat venom into my heart. She would never know until it was too late. As I left Harold's office, dusk had settled over the city, the sky painted in streaks of crimson and ash. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my bag of signed documents, feeling the weight of them press into my palm. This wasn't just paper. It was my first strike, and as the streetlights flickered on, I realized with a chill, Madison had no idea that the storm she had unleashed was already gathering force, and soon, it would crash down on everything she thought she could control. The following week, I moved with a quiet urgency. Every morning, I awoke with the same thought pulsing through my mind. It's time to disappear. Arizona had always been a dream, tucked away in the corners of my heart, a place of wide skies, dry air and mountains where silence reigned. Years ago, Julian and I had once talked about retiring there, far from the gray drizzle of Seattle. He was gone, but the dream had never left me. Now it was becoming my escape. I started small. I withdrew $30,000 from my savings, cash that I folded neatly into envelopes and hid inside an old suitcase. I canceled magazine subscriptions, closed dormant accounts, and cut every unnecessary thread tying me to this city. Each step felt like shedding an old skin. Evelyn, my neighbor of 10 years, was the first person I trusted with the truth. She sat across from me at my kitchen table, sipping tea, her sharp eyes glimmering with both concern and admiration. "Eleanor, are you sure about this? To just vanish?" "Yes," I whispered. "Madison asked for my disappearance as a gift. I'll give it to her, but on my terms. I want her to feel the void she created." Evelyn reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. "Then I'll help. Whatever you need," her support steadied me. Together, we rehearsed what she would say if Madison came looking, how she would feign worry, how she would deliver the letter I was drafting. A letter that wasn't spiteful but final. A farewell that carried the weight of every sacrifice. Meanwhile, across town, Madison's world was beginning to crumble. The first call came from the bank, a clipped voice reminding her that the mortgage was 2 months overdue. "Interest compounding," Daniel snapped after hanging up, tossing the phone onto the counter. "This is getting out of control. Why didn't you tell me your mom pulled out the joint account?" Madison's face paled. "What are you talking about?" She closed it, Madison. 20,000 gone. Do you understand what that means? We're on our own. For a moment, the room filled with the sound of the twins playing upstairs, their laughter piercing the heavy silence. Madison clenched her jaw. She wouldn't. She couldn't. But deep inside, she knew I could. And I had. Back in my apartment, I wrote late into the night. Each word of the letter carved from both sorrow and steel. "You wanted freedom from me, Madison. You wanted space, silence, disappearance. Consider this my final gift. When you read these words, I'll be gone, not in death, but in life. What you will discover is that absence carries a price. A price in dollars, a price in love, a price in peace." By dawn, the letter was sealed and placed in Evelyn's care. Days blurred together as I tied loose ends. At the travel agency, I booked a one-way ticket to Phoenix. The clerk glanced at my ID, then back at me, her smile polite. She didn't know she was handing me the key to my rebirth. On the evening before my departure, Evelyn came by with homemade stew. She looked around my half-empty apartment, boxes stacked by the door, and shook her head. "It's strange, isn't it, to pack up a whole life into a few bags?" I smiled faintly. Strange, but freeing. We ate quietly, the kind of silence that speaks more than words. That same night, Madison sat in her kitchen with bills spread across the table, mortgage statements, utility shut-off warnings, the twins' school fees. Daniel paced like a caged animal. "This is impossible," he muttered. "We can't do this without her." Madison pressed her palms to her face, her voice breaking. "She's bluffing. She has to be. She'll come back. She always does." But when her phone buzzed with another bank notification, reality clawed deeper. For the first time, Madison tasted what life without me truly meant. The next morning, before the sun broke the horizon, I stood with Evelyn outside my building. A cab idled by the curb, its headlights slicing through the mist. My 2 suitcases sat at my feet, heavy not with possessions, but with the weight of decisions. Evelyn hugged me tight, her voice trembling. "Go, Eleanor. Don't look back." I nodded, sliding into the cab. As the car pulled away, I watched the city fade, the streets, the hospital where I'd given decades of my life, the house where Madison had shattered me. All of it receded, until only the open road stretched ahead. I was vanishing, yes. But for the first time, I wasn't running away. I was running toward something new. The air in Arizona hit me like a revelation, dry, crisp, and scented faintly of mesquite. As I stepped off the plane in Phoenix, a flood of sunlight poured through the tall glass windows, brighter and sharper than the muted gray skies of Seattle. My chest expanded as if I had been holding my breath for decades and was finally able to exhale. The cab ride to my rented casita took me past sprawling desert landscapes, the red-gold mountains rising like silent sentinels in the distance. Saguaro cacti dotted the horizon, their silhouettes sharp against the vast sky. It felt as though the earth itself was whispering, "You are free now, Eleanor. Free." When we arrived, the casita was small but warm. White stucco walls, terracotta tiles, a tiny courtyard with bougainvillea spilling pink blossoms over the gate. Inside, there was just enough. 1 bedroom, a worn leather armchair by the window, and a kitchen where the light pooled golden in the afternoons. I set my suitcase down and let the silence wrap around me. No ringing phones, no footsteps echoing with impatience, no one demanding, "Mom, fix this." For the first time in decades, the silence wasn't loneliness. It was liberation. That evening, I walked outside just as the sun began to sink behind the mountains. The sky erupted in hues of fire, crimson, violet, and molten gold. The air cooled, the desert crickets hummed, and I felt something stir inside me. Not grief, not rage, something gentler. Hope. I whispered aloud, "This is what living feels like." Meanwhile, back in Seattle, Madison's kitchen looked nothing like my quiet courtyard. Papers were scattered across the table, overdue notices, foreclosure warnings, utility shut-off slips. Daniel sat slumped in a chair, his face pale with exhaustion. "The bank called again today. They're demanding immediate payment." "We don't have it, Madison." She pressed her hands to her temples. "She's bluffing." "Mom wouldn't really abandon us." Daniel's voice cracked with frustration. "Then where is she? Why hasn't she answered your calls? Why did she pull the money?" Their argument grew louder, the twins creeping halfway down the stairs, their small faces pale with confusion. Madison noticed and snapped, "Go back to your room." Her voice trembled with a mixture of anger and fear. The children retreated, but the silence that followed was louder than their footsteps. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "We've been living off your mother for years, Madison. You know it. And now that she's gone, we're exposed. If we don't pay, we'll lose the house." Madison's throat tightened. Her perfectly curated world, designer furniture, expensive wine nights, the illusion of stability, was unraveling thread by thread. And for the first time, she couldn't call me to stitch it back together. In Arizona, I found myself writing again. At the small wooden desk in my casita, I opened a fresh notebook and began to pour out memories, not just of sacrifice, but of everything I had lost of myself. Dreams I had shelved, trips I had canceled, hobbies abandoned because there was always another bill, another emergency. But now, there were no more emergencies. Only possibilities. I wrote down small goals first: learn watercolor, hike the Red Rocks, join a local book club. And then bigger ones: volunteer at a women's shelter, maybe even write my own story. Each word was a seed planted in soil I thought had long gone barren. That night, I tucked the notebook under my pillow like a secret treasure. Back in Seattle, the collapse deepened. Madison sat by the window, phone pressed to her ear, her voice brittle. "Yes, I understand," she said to the bank agent. "Yes, I'll try to make a payment. No, I don't know where she is." When she hung up, her face was ashen. Daniel's voice was low, almost a whisper. "We're going to lose everything, Madison." For the first time, she didn't argue. She simply stared at the darkened street outside, her reflection in the glass, a stranger. As for me, I stood on the balcony of my casita, gazing at the moonlit desert. The air was cool, filled with the scent of sagebrush. My heart, once so heavy, now beat with a steady rhythm of something unfamiliar but thrilling. I was no longer just surviving. I was preparing to live. And while Madison and Daniel fought to keep their crumbling world afloat, I was quietly building a new one they would never be able to touch. The morning sun in Arizona streamed through the curtains of my casita, painting the walls in soft amber. It was Saturday, and I had promised myself something different. No looking back, no counting losses, only stepping into whatever this new life could offer. I walked to the corner cafe, a cozy adobe building with turquoise shutters and the smell of cinnamon drifting out the door. Inside, the air buzzed with chatter. A flyer pinned to the corkboard caught my eye. Desert Women Rising, weekly gathering for independent women. I hesitated for only a second before jotting down the time and place. That afternoon, I found myself entering a sunlit community center just beyond the town square. About a dozen women sat in a circle, some with silver hair, some younger, all with expressions that carried both scars and strength. A woman with kind eyes and sun-weathered skin smiled at me. "First time here?" "I'm Marjorie," I nodded. "Yes, I'm Eleanor." Marjorie gestured to the chair beside her. "Then you're exactly where you need to be." As the meeting began, stories poured out, stories of women who had given decades to ungrateful children, controlling husbands or families who took until nothing was left. Each word felt like a mirror. When it was my turn, my throat tightened. My daughter. She told me her greatest wish was that I'd die. After 45 years of sacrifice. Gasps circled the room, but Marjorie reached for my hand. "And yet here you are, Alive. That's power. Tears stung my eyes, not of sorrow, but of recognition. For the first time, I wasn't alone. Back in Seattle, Madison's world narrowed to a blur of phone calls and slammed doors. She stood in the kitchen, pacing. She has to be somewhere, Daniel. She wouldn't just vanish. Daniel pinched the bridge of his nose. She did. And she took everything with her. The accounts closed, the wills changed. We have nothing. Did you check with Evelyn? Madison snapped. That old neighbor knows something, I called. She said she hasn't seen Eleanor in days. Sounded worried, but I don't buy it. Madison's eyes narrowed. She's covering for her. The phone rang again, another number, another creditor. Madison slammed it down before they could finish their rehearsed demands. Daniel's voice was low, desperate. We're sinking, Madison. If she doesn't come back, we'll lose the house. For a long moment, Madison stared at the family portrait on the wall, the one I had paid to have framed. Her reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. Finally, she whispered, "Then we'll find her. If she thinks she can just vanish, she's wrong. I'll track her down, wherever she went." In Arizona, the meeting closed with laughter, hugs, and the promise of friendship. Marjorie leaned close. "A few of us meet on Tuesdays at the park for morning walks. Come. It'll do your soul good." As I stepped out into the desert dusk, the sky blazed pink and orange over the mountains. The air smelled of dust and blooming cactus. For the first time in years, I felt something stir inside me. Lightness, even joy. That evening, I returned to my casita, journal in hand. I wrote, "I am not just surviving. I'm becoming someone new, someone who belongs to herself." I placed the journal on my nightstand, my heart calm. For the first time, the future felt like mine. Meanwhile, Madison sat in her darkened living room, laptop glowing in front of her. Search after search yielded nothing. No activity on my accounts, no recent hospital visits, no travel records she could access. Then an idea struck. She clicked through airline databases, whispering, "If she bought a ticket, I'll find it." And there, buried in a list of passenger manifests she shouldn't have been able to access, she saw it. Phoenix. One way. Eleanor Parker. Her pulse quickened. "She thinks she can run to the desert?" Madison murmured, her voice sharp as glass. "She doesn't know me at all." The Arizona sun was already warm when I joined Marjorie and the other women for the Tuesday morning walk. We met at a trailhead outside town where the path wound between red rocks and wild sage. "Keep your eyes open," Marjorie called out as we started, her laughter echoing against the cliffs. The desert always has surprises. Hawks, jackrabbits, even coyotes. The group moved at an easy pace, but inside me, something raced. For years, my mornings had begun with obligation, packing lunches, answering calls, rushing to solve Madison's crises. Now, the rhythm of my footsteps and the scent of dust and sun-baked earth filled me with something foreign and precious: freedom. As the women chatted around me, I found myself smiling. There was Ingrid, a retired teacher who had left behind children who only called when they wanted money. Ruth, a widowed nurse who had given everything to her son, only to be abandoned when he married. Their stories were mine, echoes of my pain. But here they weren't wounds. They were badges of survival. "Eleanor," Marjorie said, slowing beside me, "you belong here. You've carried other people for too long. Let the desert carry you now." Her words settled deep, like seeds in soil ready to bloom. Later that week, I signed up for a watercolor class at the community center. The brush in my hand felt awkward at first, but when I swirled blue paint across the page, I realized my strokes didn't need to be perfect. They only needed to be mine. Each splash of color felt like reclaiming a part of myself that had been buried beneath sacrifice. For the first time in decades, I caught my reflection in a mirror and didn't just see an old woman with tired eyes. I saw someone beginning again, someone alive. In Seattle, Madison's house no longer smelled of lavender candles. It reeked of stale coffee and tension. She slammed her laptop shut, turning to Daniel. "She's in Phoenix. I found her ticket." "One way." Daniel's eyes widened. "Madison, maybe we should—" "Don't say it," she cut him off, her voice sharp. Don't you dare say we should let her go. We can't survive without her." He rubbed his face, exhausted. "What if she doesn't want to be found? What if she's finally done?" Madison's laugh was bitter. "She doesn't get to be done. Not after everything. She owes us." The words hung heavy, even for her, but desperation had twisted gratitude into entitlement long ago. That night, while Daniel slept fitfully, Madison booked her own ticket. Phoenix. Direct flight. The confirmation email flashed on her screen like a promise. She whispered into the dark, "You can run to the desert, Mom, but I'll find you." Meanwhile, Arizona's nights became my sanctuary. The casita courtyard glowed under strings of lights Evelyn had insisted I pack before leaving Seattle. I sat with my journal, the sound of cicadas filling the silence, and wrote, "I thought my story ended with betrayal, but perhaps it begins again here, with laughter, paintbrushes, desert walks, and women who understand." The next morning, Ingrid handed me a coffee as we sat after class. "You're glowing, Eleanor," she said warmly, "like someone who finally put down a heavy load." I chuckled softly. Maybe I did, and for the first time, I believed it, but shadows were moving closer. At Phoenix Airport, Madison stepped off the plane, her sunglasses hiding the fury in her eyes. She gripped her phone tightly, scrolling through rental car options. "She thinks she's free," Madison muttered under her breath. "But she's not." Her nails dug crescents into her palm as she selected the nearest car. She had one goal: find me, drag me back into her orbit, and remind me who she thought held the power. The folding chairs squeaked as women settled into the circle at the community center. Afternoon sunlight poured through the windows, lighting the room with a warm glow. I clutched the notebook in my lap, fingers trembling. Marjorie gave me an encouraging nod. "Eleanor, you said you wanted to share today." For a moment, silence pressed against my ribs. Then slowly I lifted my head. "My daughter," I began, my voice soft, "once told me the only gift she wanted from me was my death." Gasps rippled through the room. Faces turned toward me, sympathetic, shocked, but attentive. "I gave her everything," I continued, each word like a stone pulled from my chest. "When she was sick, I sold jewelry to buy medicine. When she wanted to shine at her prom, I worked weekends for months to buy her the dress she dreamed of. I paid for her college, her wedding, her house, her children's braces. Nearly $500,000. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to go on. And after all of that, when I showed up at her door on her birthday with a cake, she wished me gone. She said I was suffocating her. The room held its breath. My tears blurred the circle of faces, but I pressed forward. That day, something in me broke. But something else woke up. I realized I had spent my whole life giving, and she had spent her whole life taking. So I left. I walked away. For the first time, I chose myself. When I finished, silence lingered for a heartbeat. Then Marjorie reached out and clasped my hand. "Eleanor," she said softly, "you are brave. You are not broken. You are reborn." Applause filled the room. Women leaned closer, some with tears in their eyes, others nodding fiercely as if my story was their own. For the first time in decades, I felt seen. Not as Madison's mother, not as a servant of other people's needs, but as Eleanor. Meanwhile, Madison prowled the streets of Phoenix like a restless shadow. At a cafe, she leaned over the counter, flashing a strained smile at the barista. "Excuse me, I'm looking for an older woman, about 72, short gray hair, kind of dignified." "She might have come through here," the barista shrugged. "Sorry, ma'am. Lots of retirees around here." Madison bit back her frustration, moving on. She scoured neighborhoods, slipped flyers under doors with Eleanor's photo, even stopped strangers on the street. Each rejection chipped at her veneer of control. By evening, her hair clung to her temples in the desert heat. She sat in her rental car staring at the empty gas gauge, whispering, "Where are you, Mom?" You can't just disappear. But beneath the desperation was something darker. Fear. Without me, Madison wasn't just abandoned. She was exposed. Back at the community center, the women gathered around me after the meeting. Ingrid pressed a tissue into my hand. "You've given us courage, Eleanor. To know we're not alone." Another woman, Ruth, smiled through her tears. "Your story is proof we can choose ourselves, even after 70. Their words filled me with something Madison's house never had: belonging. It was as if, in this circle, I had found the family I had always deserved. That night, I walked back to my casita beneath a desert sky glittering with stars. My heart was lighter, my steps freer. For the first time, I believed I wasn't just surviving. I was starting over. But across town, Madison sat in a motel room with her laptop glowing faintly. She scrolled through community postings, her eyes catching on a flyer: Desert Women Rising, support group for independent women. Weekly gatherings at the town center, her lips curled into a sharp smile. So, that's where you've been hiding. The desert afternoon shimmered with heat, the horizon blurring as I left the community center. My heart was light, still echoing with the applause of women who had embraced my story. I clutched my notebook close, a treasure chest of new beginnings, but then a voice pierced the stillness. Mom. I froze. The sound was unmistakable, sharp as broken glass. Slowly, I turned. Madison stood across the street, framed by the glaring sun. Her hair was windswept, her blouse wrinkled from travel, but her eyes, those piercing blue eyes, were ablaze. Anger, desperation, and something else I couldn't name swirled in them. My breath caught. The past I thought I had left in Seattle had tracked me into the desert. She strode forward, her heels striking the pavement with fury. So this is where you've been hiding? With strangers? I swallowed hard, forcing my voice steady. They're not strangers. They're my friends. Friends? Her laugh was brittle, echoing off the adobe walls. You abandoned your family to sit in circles with bitter old women who can't let go of their grudges? Her words stung, but I stood taller. Around us, a few women from the group lingered at the doorway, their eyes sharp, ready. Marjorie's voice carried across the street. Eleanor, do you need us? I shook my head gently, though my pulse thundered. No, this is mine to face. Madison's gaze flicked toward them, then back at me, sharper. You've humiliated me. Do you know what people are saying? That I can't even keep my own mother under control. That you've lost your mind. Her words were venom, but beneath them was fear. You're not here because you love me, I said quietly. You're here because without me, your world is collapsing. Her lips tightened. You don't get it, do you? We need you. The kids need you. Daniel needs you. The bank is breathing down our necks. You can't just walk away. I clenched my fists, the desert wind tugging at my hair. I already did. For the first time, her voice cracked. Don't you dare. After everything, you owe us. I stepped closer, my shadow falling across hers. No, Madison. I don't owe you anymore. You wished for my death. This, I spread my arms, the desert stretching wide behind me. This is what that death looks like. The end of the woman who gave until there was nothing left. And the birth of someone new. Her eyes glistened, but fury swallowed her tears. You think this will last? You think you can just erase me? I felt the women behind me, their presence a wall of strength. For the first time I realized I wasn't alone in this battle. I'm not erasing you, I said. I'm releasing myself. The silence stretched, hot and heavy. Madison's jaw trembled as if she wanted to spit more venom, but words failed her. Finally, she turned on her heel, retreating toward the rental car parked down the street. Before she opened the door, she threw one last look over her shoulder. This isn't over. The engine roared to life, and she sped away, dust rising in her wake. I stood rooted, my chest heaving, the desert sun scorching my skin. For a moment, doubt clawed at me. Had I done the right thing? Could I withstand the storm she promised? Then Marjorie's hand landed gently on my shoulder. You stood your ground, Eleanor. That's the hardest part, I nodded, though my legs shook. Somewhere beyond the mountains, Madison was plotting her next move. And I knew the battle wasn't finished, but neither was I. The desert dawn painted the mountains in strokes of rose and gold. I sat on the patio of my casita, a mug of coffee warming my hands, my notebook open before me. The night's confrontation still echoed in my chest. Madison's furious voice lingering like a storm that hadn't passed. But as the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon, clarity came. Madison's words, "This isn't over," were meant as a threat. Yet to me they sounded like freedom, because she was right, it wasn't over. But not in the way she thought. The story wasn't ending with her rage. It was beginning with my choice. I wrote in my notebook, I choose life. My life. Later that day, the women of Desert Women Rising gathered again. When I walked in, their faces lit up. Marjorie embraced me. We heard Madison showed up. "You okay?" I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips. For the first time in years, I didn't break. I didn't bend. I stood. Applause circled the room, but it wasn't the applause that mattered. It was the realization. I didn't need Madison's approval to feel whole. I had already found it here, in a circle of women who understood, who lifted me when I faltered. Meanwhile, back in Seattle, Madison's world unraveled faster. The foreclosure notice arrived. The utilities were cut. Daniel's resignation deepened into silence. The twins' laughter turned to whispers of confusion. Without my safety net, Madison faced reality stripped bare, but I wasn't there to see it. I wasn't there to rescue her, and that was the lesson she needed most. Weeks passed. Arizona bloomed around me. I joined painting classes, laughed at potluck dinners, and hiked trails where hawks wheeled high above. The desert no longer felt foreign. It felt like home. One evening, as the sun sank behind the crimson cliffs, I gathered with my new friends around a fire pit. The flames crackled, sparks rising into the twilight. We shared stories, each one a thread weaving us together. When it was my turn, I spoke with steady conviction. My daughter wished for my death, and in a way she got it. The woman who sacrificed everything, who lived only to please, who carried burdens never meant to be hers, she's gone, dead. The group fell silent, the firelight dancing in their eyes. But from that death, I continued, came a rebirth. I'm no longer defined by what I give up. I am defined by what I choose. And today I choose joy, peace, and myself. Tears slipped down my cheeks, but this time they weren't tears of loss. They were tears of release. The women clapped, some stood to hug me. In that moment, I realized I wasn't alone, and I never would be again. That night, under a sky glittering with 1,000 stars, I wrote my final entry in the notebook. Madison asked for disappearance. I gave it to her, but what she never understood is that disappearance is not always death. Sometimes it's rebirth. I closed the notebook, my heart lighter than ever, and now to you, the one listening to my story, I want to say this. We spend so much of our lives giving, sacrificing, bending ourselves into shapes to fit other people's needs. But sometimes love without limits becomes chains. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give is not our obedience, but our freedom. If you've ever felt taken for granted, if you've ever been told you're too much, too present, too burdensome, remember this: you have the right to choose yourself. It is never too late to begin again. I began at 72. You can begin today, so tell me, what part of your life are you ready to reclaim? Write it in the comments. Let's inspire each other, because none of us are truly alone in this. If this story touched you, give it a like, share it with someone who needs courage, and subscribe for more stories of strength and survival. God always blesses, and I am convinced that courage leads us to better days. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I leave you with 2 of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm sure they will surprise you. With love, Eleanor.